Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. And this is Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from here in the podcasting studios of the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I'd like to acknowledge that I live and I work in the land of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, known to us as Songhees and Esquimalt, or Cosapsan. And all of this is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are changing what banking does for people, for community, and for the planet. A little over 2 years ago, municipal elections happened across British Columbia, and there was a lot of change. There was a lot of things were changed up, the way that council profiles happened, mayor's chairs switched, a lot of that stuff. One of those places was the City of Langford. So 2 years into the mandate, we're going to chat today with the mayor of Langford, Mayor Scott Goodmanson. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bruce. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you here. So 2 years since you've assumed office and become the mayor, what's been sort of the most surprising thing about the role to you?
It's probably two things are most surprising. One, I knew it'd be a lot of meetings. I did not have an idea how many meetings it would be.
Okay.
It is every day. It is just meetings. I can't even imagine trying to run my business still. Like it's down, it's gone. I barely have time for all our meetings we have. The other one is the number of people that actually approach me in like the oddest locations that can line up, or in the mall, or I'm walking down a sidewalk and someone honks or someone waves out a window at a rec center, and not just in Langford. I've been up island, I've been on the mainland. People recognize me and say things like "good job" or like "keep up the change" or whatever is on their mind.
Yeah, that's very gratifying, I'm sure. And my life is also meeting after meeting as a rule, but you learn a lot in meetings, right? But what of all the things that you do, what do you like the most about being mayor?
Talking with people. I'm never one short for words, usually anyway, but I really relish when I get out of the office and I just get to talk to people, whether it's in a meeting, something like this. We just had our Station Road Legion crosswalk, memorial for the veterans crosswalk.
Mm.
We just opened that up, and that was 2 hours of talking with people from all sides of the political debate. Everyone came together to put this through. And it's a fantastic example of how you can walk across multiple different lines and work together.
Yeah. You talk about the remarkable number of meetings that you take part in. What are unexpected things? I mean, maybe that number of meetings wasn't expected. Are there any unexpected things that have come along in your time as mayor?
For clarification, on meetings wise or in general?
Just in general.
Yeah. No one expected Ridgeview to happen again.
Hmm.
That was the building we had to evacuate.
Yep.
There's no training or planning for that. Staff talks to you in the morning, and that afternoon you're doing my first real scrum, and having to just say flatly at this point everyone needs to evacuate the building. That's not something you think about when you're running for the position. And later looking at a map on my desk, and it's just a map and a circle, and I was like, that's a fall down map. Theoretically, if the building fell down, this is where it would land. Luckily, that's not the issue. But those are things you don't even dream that you're going to be dealing with. When we lost Lance Cabin from Langford Fire Rescue, I never thought I would be writing up commentary for a service for one of the Langford family. He was more than just a fireman. For decades, he was embedded in the community, and that's again not something that anyone ever says, "Hey, you might have to do this."
Yeah. Another unexpected thing was the flood. You had a flood at City Hall too, right?
On my birthday.
On your birthday, really?
Yes. It is the joke. I have my personal phone and my city phone, and they follow me around the house. My wife gives me a hard time about it because just in case something happens, and it was my birthday, and I thought, you know what, just put it down over there just for an hour or two to try to be there with the people who come to say happy birthday, and you know cake and candles and all that. And then I look at my phone and I see all these calls, and it's from staff and from Chief Aubrey. And I thought, what? Call back to find that, yeah, just about when we were blowing out the candles is when the alarms went off in Langford Fire rushed here.
And that was quite a process when that all happened. That's for sure. So,
And so now no longer am I ever 2 hours away from my phone.
no.
That was the one time, and it's not going to happen again.
Okay. So you had some priorities when you assumed office, and I assume some of those priorities have shifted a little bit as things have become more apparent and more clear to you. Tell me about some of that shift.
Well, things you learn when you come in, and it's been interesting because you get to see things from both sides of the lens. So people all the time say politicians lied. They said they do this, and they haven't. And I ran on very basic things. There wasn't any wild promises. It was, one of the number one things was it was getting people engaged in the city again. There are times when council meetings were on average 12, 14 minutes long. You didn't have time to take off your jacket and have a sip of coffee before the meeting was closed. Now we've got meetings that are hours upon hours long. We've gone, I think, as late as 1:30 in the morning. We repeatedly have called up. We want to hear from residents, on different things that are going on. And to some degree, the advent of new technologies and software and that, it's a lot easier to get people to interact with City Hall compared to just before. It was basically walking in or calling, or send a letter by Canada Post. So that has been good. I nothing that I was really wanting to get done have we had to shift away from. Really, we haven't had to do any major, big X's on this is what we were hoping, because we just don't have that, in council. So I'm very, very lucky to have a good council like that.
Yeah. Maclean's magazine named Langford as the best place to live in BC, and we're going to talk about that next. On Chamber Chats today, we're chatting with Scott Goodmanson. He's the mayor of the City of Langford, which was voted by Maclean's magazine as the best place to live in BC. BC Business Magazine named Langford the best place to work and the most resilient community. What are the factors that make that happen?
A lot. Luckily, I would not have to do the math on all that. If I remember right, it's about 415 communities that were ranked. And one of the things is very quantifiable metrics. So it's not, I think these are things that they can measure. And so it's equal all the way across. A lot of things like affordability, population growth, taxes, crime, amenities, health, community, weather, internet access. I mean, a variety of things across the scale. So it's not picking and focusing on one demographic. It is things that would hopefully reach all demographics that could be in your community.
Yeah, we're going to touch on some of those things as we continue the conversation here. But here's a cool question. How would you describe Langford to someone who's never been there?
It's funny, I do that all the time, but it's not a set statement because, it's people's background, I would call it a vibrant, growing city. We have a very near and dear, long-lived community. There are people and families that have been here for decades upon decades. And if you've been here long enough, and I'll have to say all for the Western communities, you will see names, streets, and so on, and you'll be like, oh yeah. You realize later, like I went to school with their grandkids, and or I went to school with them in high school, or I used to work with them. You don't realize then, that these are long names. But then you have a large population that has just been here. rough numbers. 2019, we were 38,000. End of 23, if I remember right, we were 52,950. I mean, that is a huge growth in just 4 years. So there is a lot of people that don't have that history. So they've come to Langford for what we have here: the amenities, the vibrancy, the schools, all the things that are near and dear to them.
Yeah, when you talk about that population increase, the average increase municipally is about 1% a year. Langford grows at 5% a year. Is that always going to be the case, do you think? Is that sort of a sustainable model?
No, that's not sustainable. And I don't have a set growth percentage, because a lot of it is what's already coming through. You've heard me talk before about that continuity of council. There is work, there are plans, there are ideas that were already in place before we came here. And when my time is done, there's going to be things that we've set in place that the next council, the next mayor will be working on. So that's where we are right now, but that's not really sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen all this amazing growth in Langford over many, many years. A lot of building, a lot of development. Much of that sector has been slowed down because of inflation and interest rates right now. So how is that impacting that sector in Langford?
So I haven't seen the numbers for all of 24 yet, but in 2023, we did over $500 million in construction and growth. It was 500 and some odd million. That's not a small amount of growth. That is a huge amount of work. While we were in the midst of that slowdown, there are thousands of bids that are in the pipework, and they're just waiting for the right time for those projects to come through.
Yeah, and I think the interest rate shift will help that because they are starting to come down now. Speaking of all that kind of stuff, though, everybody wants to talk about taxes, property tax rates. There's been a lot of discussion about that because of the rate of increase that's being put in place. How does that look for Langford?
We haven't gone into that yet. That'll be coming up in future weeks. But no, we actually haven't. Staff has not brought that to our attention yet. We have things that are concerns. I mean, there's been a substantial amount of downloading onto the municipalities, and that's not just Langford alone. VMQ, Vancouver Island Major Crimes Unit, which is the province is wanting to expand. We've been providing an officer for it, and so has Colwood. So you're looking at basically a $200,000 subsidy towards it. The last numbers I saw, to be corrected by the province, was 952 million. That's a jump that we either say, no, we're not part of this, or where we have to take that. And when you look at startup fees, that could be as high as like 1.25 million that we have no say on. It's either take it or leave it. So with that, I can tell you that the West Shore mayors have met with VMQ, and all the mayors in the CRD have issues, and looking for the rationale of why it doesn't go by just population or crime rate. Esquimalt has 18,000 people, and they were looking at 900,000. Colwood is 26,000. They were looking at 350. When we ask why the disparity there, they weren't able to give us an answer. So I'll give Minister Farnworth credit. We met with the province and MQ, and he did send a letter saying, we are going to look at this. And when we're at UBCM this last September, we brought it up just as a reminder and thanked them for the letter. But this is something that will live or die on what happens in the CRD.
Yeah, the day that we're recording this, actually, the cabinet has not yet been sworn in, so it might not be Minister Farnworth that you talked to about that.
No, but that's who I did talk to. Yeah. As well, we have ECOM 911. We are getting a possible $2 million hit. That, again, nothing to do with Langford. This is just from the province down. And it's not Ecom, the entity itself. I had a 90-minute meeting with the vice president of operations when I was at UBCM. And then after that we talked with one of his associates. They're not setting the price, the province is. And what's frustrating is everyone in the CRD is going to pay their share that they've been told they have to pay, but Campbell River doesn't have to pay. Vernon doesn't pay. Kelowna doesn't pay. Kamloops doesn't pay. We're not saying we don't want to pay, but we've been given no rationale why the CRD and the Lower Mainland all have to pay, and then areas up the island and all across the interior and so on that are just as big or larger than CRD communities don't have to pay. So that's not just Langford alone, but that is coming to all the municipalities.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of meetings, as we said before. Something else that people talk about across the entire region is traffic, and I want to do that when we continue our conversation with Mayor Scott Goodmanson. We're chatting today on Chamber Chats with Scott Goodmanson. He is the mayor of the city of Langford. So there's been construction everywhere, all over the place. Saanich is talking about Mackenzie, and there's work on Blanchard, and there's work on Douglas, and there's all over the place. What sort of things does Langford have in mind when you're planning things to make sure that traffic flow is reasonable and not a huge hassle?
Well, I mean, probably the number one thing is we're in the middle of the city's very first ever master transportation plan. Mm-hmm. We've never had one. There's been no plans on overall where the roads go, what the traffic flows are, which way we're trying to put stuff. Now, to be fair, there was an OCP before, and that is a simplified strat plan, and you can look at roads on that. But there's never been a master transportation plan. So we're in the middle of that. As well, the province has said everyone has to do an active transportation plan. So, I mean, that is routes for people to walk, to bike, to e-scooter, whether separated trails, roadside lanes, and everything in between. And how can you funnel that traffic away from the major road traffic? Basically, they're telling us you have to have a plan for people that want to and have the ability to walk, bike, cycle in whatever format they have, any other way, allow them to do that.
So as Langford does grow at the pace that it will grow, what sort of businesses do you want to see there? What sort of attraction plan do you have to bring things to diversify the economy?
Well, I mean, the nice thing about having a city that's growing so much, you have the ability to want to attract, just about anything that's going to create services and stops for your residents and for people that are coming in. We've had obviously, as you've seen, a large number of big box stores. Those are mostly car-driven vehicle access stores, and that's okay. I'm not berating them, but we don't have a lot of space actually left for big box parks. What we're looking for is we densify the core. In an ideal world, and this is not set in stone that it has to be this way, but if you're going to have a multi-story building, in an ideal world, you can have that bottom floor is those cafes, the coffee shops, the restaurants, the smaller retail that is open later. So that the term is sticky streets. You want to activate that sidewalk, because in many municipalities, people go down a sidewalk as fast as they can. Ideally, you got people interacting with what is on that sidewalk level. And then if on the second story, you can have your lawyers, your dentists, your services that your community needs, but they're kind of closed 5 o'clock till 9 a.m. and closed on weekends. In an ideal world, those aren't necessarily on the sidewalk level, because then you've got a close frontage all weekend or each night. So that's something that we work with the development community. We work with the business community, work with our plans, so we can try to encourage that, so that people can walk from where they're living for a coffee. You don't have to have a 20-minute drive across Langford, which isn't length, just time in traffic to go for a coffee, or just to get some milk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just about out of time here, but so you're halfway through the first term. You have 2 more years to go, basically. What are your priorities going to be going forward for the rest of this term?
Um, well, I mean, there's my priorities and there's the council and city's priorities. So, I mean, we have engaged in these master plans. We last year we did the city's first ever comprehensive strat plan, and that's been fairly well received. Anywhere we go, I will show, and people have routinely asked, "Can we get copies of this?" Now we have our major master plans. It's a transportation plan, active transportation plan, parks and rec plan. We have asset management plan. For myself, healthcare is a big one, and it's an unfortunate one because not too long ago, this was not a municipal line item. That was federal money down to the province. The province deals with healthcare, and that's no longer. You can see, across the CRD, municipalities are putting in their money towards healthcare when just a few years ago they didn't have to. And healthcare is not cheap. Of all the things you can be putting money on, it's one of the most expensive. But we need doctors, we need facilities, and you can either put your head in the sand and say it's not my responsibility, or you can work towards it and try to find solutions for those deficits that are just not here in Langford, but across the CRD.
Well, you have your work cut out for you, and you got a couple of years left to get that mandate rolling. We always appreciate your time. There's so much more we could talk about. We'll have to do it another time, though. But we appreciate you being here today, Scott. Thank you for your time today.
Anytime you want to talk, I'm here. Thank you very, very much.
All righty. Scott Goodmanson is the mayor of the City of Langford. I'm Bruce Williams, and we'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.